I sat in my office, the weight of the termination letter heavy in my hands. The words blurred for a moment as I tried to process the reality of it all. Fired. It felt surreal, as if the universe had shifted on its axis and I was left grappling with the consequences. My mind raced back to the clients I had built relationships with over the years. They trusted me, relied on my guidance, and now, what would happen to them? It wasn't just my career at stake, it was their futures too. I could almost hear their voices in my head, asking me for advice, seeking my counsel. The thought of letting them down twisted in my stomach. I had poured my heart into my work, forging bonds that felt like family. Each client had their own hopes and dreams, and I had been a part of that journey. But now, as I stared at the letter, I wondered if I had failed them. Would they understand? Would they still believe in me after this? The executives who signed off on my termination felt like distant figures, shadowy antagonists in this drama. They didn't see the late nights, the extra efforts, the sacrifices I made for the firm and for my clients. To them, I was just a number, a statistic to be discarded when they decided to tighten their belts. A sinking feeling settled in my chest. I picked up my phone, hesitating to reach out to the clients. What could I say? Hey, it's me. I just got fired, how about we keep in touch? It seemed absurd, yet they deserved to know the truth. I had to protect them from the fallout of this decision, from the cold corporate reality that saw them only as dollar signs. They were more than that to me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I couldn't let fear paralyze me, I had to act. My strategy was still forming in my mind, and I knew I had to reach out to them, find a way to reassure them that they weren't alone in this. With each passing moment, the urgency grew. I needed to connect with them to maintain the trust we had built. I had to figure out how to salvage this situation, not just for myself but for all of them. I couldn't allow the executives' decisions to dictate the narrative. My clients deserved better, and I was determined to give them that, no matter the cost. As I started drafting messages, the reality of my situation sank deeper. I felt the tension in the air, the stakes higher than ever before. I had been terminated, but I was not defeated. This was a turning point, and I was ready to take the reins of my destiny, even if it meant fighting against the very system that had cast me aside. As I sat there contemplating my next steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that my clients needed me now more than ever. I had always positioned myself as their advocate, a trusted advisor navigating the turbulent waters of our industry. The executives at the firm might have seen me as an expendable asset, but my clients viewed me as a lifeline. I had built rapport with them over countless meetings, late-night calls, and unyielding support. I recalled moments when they shared their vulnerabilities, their fears about market fluctuations or impending product launches. In those conversations, I had become more than just a consultant, I was a confidant. I could picture their faces, the way they leaned in when I spoke, eager for insights that could steer their businesses toward success. But now, with my termination hanging over me like a dark cloud, I feared for the relationships I had nurtured. I had to remind myself that trust was a two-way street. They had believed in me, and I refused to let them down. I envisioned a world where my departure from the firm didn't signify an end, but rather a new beginning for both them and me. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen, the cursor blinking as if urging me to take action. I thought about the various clients I had worked with, the ones who had invested not just money but faith in my abilities. How could I convey to them the reality of my situation without causing panic? The executives' view of my termination was one of cold logic. They saw it as a necessary cost-cutting measure, but the reality was far more nuanced. My clients were not mere numbers, they were individuals with aspirations and dreams. I started drafting messages, carefully choosing my words to reflect both honesty and reassurance. I needed to communicate that while I was no longer with the firm, my commitment to them was unwavering. I had to emphasize the importance of continuity, of maintaining the strategies we had built together. As I wrote, I could almost hear their reactions in my mind. Some would be shocked, perhaps even angry, others might feel betrayed. But I hoped that beneath their initial responses, they would understand my intention was to protect them, to shield them from the fallout of an impersonal corporate decision. I crafted a message to one of my long-standing clients, a family-owned business that had weathered storms and enjoyed successes with my guidance. Dear client's name, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out personally to share some important news. I am no longer with firm name, but I want to assure you that my commitment to your success remains unchanged. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. I'm here for you. With each email I sent, I felt a mix of anxiety and relief. I was unsure how they would react, but I had to trust that the foundation we had built together was strong enough to withstand this upheaval. I could envision them reading my words, eyebrows furrowed in confusion, but hopefully, also recognizing the sincerity behind them. The clock ticked ominously in the background as I continued reaching out to more clients. I felt the pressure mounting. Each message was a gamble, a test of the trust we had developed over the years. Would they still see me as their ally, or would the firm's decision tarnish the bond we had forged? As the last email left my outbox, I leaned back in my chair, the weight of uncertainty still heavy. I had taken the first step, but I knew the journey ahead would be challenging. I had to brace myself for their responses, for the potential fallout that could ripple through our relationships. But one thing was clear: I was determined to fight for them, to ensure that my termination would not sever the ties we had built. Their futures mattered to me, and I would not allow them to be collateral damage in a corporate game that saw them as mere figures on a balance sheet. As I awaited responses from my clients, an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread filled the air around me. I had sent out numerous emails, each one a carefully crafted message meant to convey not just facts but also my unwavering support. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second amplifying the weight of the unknown. Would they view my termination as a betrayal, or would they grasp the intent behind my outreach? I found myself pacing the room, the tension coiling tighter with each passing moment. The executives had made their decision, but the real test lay in how my clients perceived this upheaval. I had spent years ensuring they felt valued and supported, and now I was risking everything to maintain that connection. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. Was it a client reaching out to ask for clarification, or perhaps a response filled with disappointment? I had to remind myself that I was not just a consultant. I was an advocate for their dreams. My commitment to them had never wavered, even as the corporate landscape shifted beneath us. Suddenly, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a familiar name, one of my largest clients. I took a deep breath, steeling myself before answering. "Hello, client's name," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your name, I just wanted to talk about your email. I was shocked to hear about your termination. We need to discuss what this means for our projects moving forward. We've built something valuable together, and I want to ensure that we don't lose that momentum." Relief washed over me. Their immediate reaction was concern, not anger. "I appreciate you reaching out, and I assure you that my commitment to your success remains unchanged. I'm here to help navigate this transition." As we spoke, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about salvaging my position, but about reaffirming the bond we shared. I explained how we could continue our work together, emphasizing that I was willing to adapt to whatever changes were necessary. "We trust you, and your insights have been invaluable. We want to explore how we can keep this relationship strong, even with your departure from firm name," they said. I could feel the weight of their words lifting some of the burden I carried. This was the kind of trust I had fought for, and it was rewarding to see it manifest in their willingness to support me. After the call, I sat back in my chair, a small smile creeping across my face. This was only the beginning. I had turned the tide in one conversation, but there were many more to come. I needed to build on this momentum, to reassure each client that their interests were still my top priority. I began preparing for the next calls, writing down key points to address. I needed to be strategic in my approach, ensuring that each conversation echoed the same commitment I had shown in my emails. I wanted them to see that my departure from the firm didn't diminish my dedication to them. As I made the next call, I felt a sense of empowerment surging through me. I was reclaiming my narrative, not as a victim of corporate decisions, but as a champion for my clients. The voices of the executives faded into the background. They no longer defined my path. Each call revealed a different reaction, but the common thread was a shared concern for the future. One client wanted to discuss potential alternatives for ongoing projects, while another expressed hesitation but remained open to continuing our collaboration. I listened intently, crafting my responses carefully to address their worries while reinforcing the strength of our relationship. By the end of the day, I had spoken with several clients, each conversation adding to my confidence. I was no longer just a consultant, but a crucial ally in their journey. The executives may have thought they could erase me with a termination letter, but what they didn't realize was that the connections I had built were far more resilient than they imagined. As night fell, I reflected on the day's progress. I had faced the uncertainty head-on and transformed it into an opportunity for growth, not just for me, but for my clients as well. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but I was ready to navigate it alongside them. I had ignited a spark of hope amidst the turmoil, and now it was time to fan those flames into a powerful force for change. With renewed determination, I prepared for another round of outreach. If this was the turning point, then I would make it a defining moment, not just for myself, but for those who depended on me. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had my resolve. I was ready to fight for my clients, to show them that even in the face of adversity, we could forge ahead together. This was a battle I was determined to win. As the hours ticked by, I felt the air around me thick with tension. Each moment brought me closer to the evening, when the full scope of my termination would settle like a storm cloud over my clients. I had sent out emails, made calls, and tried to reassure them, but the dread of their responses loomed large in my mind. Would they feel abandoned? Would they doubt my commitment to them? I paced my office, the walls closing in as I envisioned the conversations that lay ahead. I had spent years cultivating trust, and now I was terrified of what might happen next. My phone buzzed again, interrupting my thoughts. It was a text from another client wanting to discuss my departure. My heart raced. As I replied, I reflected on how my clients had been my lifeline, the reason I had fought through long days and late nights. I had always believed in their potential, guiding them through challenges and celebrating their victories. But now, I wondered if I could maintain that connection amid uncertainty. The thought of facing them in person was daunting. I imagined their faces, the concern in their eyes, the questions bubbling beneath the surface. I yearned to reassure them that I was still their advocate, that I would fight for their interests regardless of my circumstances. I had to find the right words to convey my unwavering support even as I navigated my own upheaval. As evening approached, I prepared my notes, outlining the key points I wanted to address. I needed to be clear, honest, and above all, reassuring. The last thing I wanted was for them to feel lost in this corporate mess. I had to remind them of the strategies we had laid out together, the plans that hadn't changed just because I had lost my job. When the first client arrived, I felt a surge of anxiety. I greeted them with a smile that belied my internal turmoil. They looked concerned, their brow furrowed. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me on such short notice," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I know my termination was unexpected, and I want to assure you that my commitment to your success remains unchanged." The client nodded, their expression softening slightly. They opened their mouth to speak, and I held my breath, waiting for their response. "We were shocked to hear about your situation. You've been instrumental in our progress, and I want to know how we can keep this momentum going," they said, concern etched on their face. Relief flooded through me. This was the reaction I had hoped for, an acknowledgement of our partnership rather than a severing of ties. I explained my thoughts, emphasizing the importance of continuity and how I could still support them as they navigated the upcoming challenges. As we spoke, I felt a sense of empowerment growing within me. I was not just a casualty of corporate decisions, I was a champion for their success. One conversation turned into another, and each client I met with echoed similar sentiments. They were surprised, yes, but more than that, they seemed eager to find a way forward. I shared my vision for our continued work together, outlining how I could adapt to their needs even without the firm behind me. Each time they expressed their trust in me, I felt the weight of uncertainty lift a little more. By the end of the evening, I had met with several clients, and the threads of our relationships felt stronger than ever. I had turned a moment of crisis into an opportunity to reinforce our bonds. I realized that my clients were not just business transactions, they were partners who valued my insights and dedication. As I prepared to leave the office, I couldn't help but smile. I had faced the storm head-on, and instead of being swept away, I had found solid ground. This evening had been a testament to the trust we had built, and I was determined to nurture it further. I had ignited a spark of hope, and now it was time to fan those flames. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was ready to navigate it alongside my clients. I had transformed my termination into a rallying cry, a commitment to fight for their interests and ensure that our work together continued to thrive. Tomorrow would bring more conversations, more outreach, and more opportunities to solidify our relationships. I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, to show my clients that even in the face of adversity, we could forge ahead together. This was a battle I was determined to win, not just for myself, but for all of them. As I stood in the dimly lit conference room, the air felt charged with anticipation. The clients began to trickle in, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. I had taken great care in preparing for this moment, wanting to ensure they understood that my commitment to them remained steadfast, despite the upheaval in my professional life. The first client I faced was one I had worked with for years, a family-owned business that had weathered many storms. Their eyes reflected a mix of worry and hope as they took their seats. "Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice," the owner said, their voice slightly shaky. "We were shocked to hear about your termination. What does this mean for our ongoing projects?" I took a deep breath, recalling the words I had rehearsed countless times. "I understand your concerns, and I want to assure you that my commitment to your success remains unchanged. I am still here to support you and ensure we keep our momentum going. Let's talk about how we can navigate this transition together." A sense of relief washed over me as I spoke. Their immediate reaction was not anger or betrayal, but concern for the projects we had built together. We discussed our strategies, the plans we had laid out, and how they could continue to count on my expertise. I felt empowered by their trust, and it invigorated my resolve to fight for their interests. As the meeting progressed, I noticed a shift in their demeanor. They began to see me not just as a consultant who had been let go, but as a partner committed to their growth. I could see them leaning in, listening intently as I outlined potential paths forward. I emphasized that the bond we had formed was not contingent upon my employment with the firm. It was built on mutual respect and shared goals. One by one, more clients arrived, each bringing their own questions and concerns. I met with them all, and the conversations mirrored the first. The themes of trust and continuity echoed throughout each discussion. I reassured them that I would remain available, dedicating myself to their needs even without the firm's backing. I could feel the atmosphere lightening with each exchange, the initial tension dissipating as we focused on actionable next steps. By the time the last client left, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I had successfully transformed an evening that could have been filled with despair into one of renewed hope and collaboration. The executives at the firm may have thought my termination would sever my ties with clients, but they underestimated the strength of the relationships I had built. As I closed the door behind the last client, I reflected on how far I had come in just a few hours. I had faced the storm and emerged not just unscathed but emboldened. My clients had responded with understanding and a willingness to adapt, and it became clear to me that this was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for them but for me as well. I turned off the lights in the conference room and walked to my office, ready to put my plans into action. This was not just about survival, it was about thriving in the face of adversity. I had ignited a spark of hope in my clients, and now it was time to fan those flames into a powerful force for change. The following days were filled with more outreach, more calls, and more meetings. Each interaction reinforced the foundation of trust we had built. I was no longer a casualty of corporate decisions. I was a champion for my clients, ready to fight for their success at any cost. As I continued to connect with clients, I was struck by the resilience of our partnerships. They appreciated my transparency and my commitment to helping them navigate the uncertain waters ahead. I had turned a moment of crisis into an opportunity to strengthen our bonds, and it felt invigorating to reclaim my narrative. The executives at the firm may have believed they could erase me with a termination letter, but they had underestimated the power of the relationships I had nurtured. I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, to ensure that my clients felt supported and valued, regardless of the circumstances. As I moved forward, I remained focused on the future. I knew that challenges would arise, but I also knew that together we could overcome anything. I was determined to show my clients that even in the face of adversity, we could forge ahead together, stronger than before. In the end, it was not just about me, it was about all of us. I vowed to continue being their advocate, their trusted advisor, and their partner in navigating the complexities of our industry. This was a battle I was ready to win, not just for myself, but for all of them. And as I stepped into the new day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had transformed my termination into a rallying cry, a commitment to fight for their interests and ensure that our work together continued to thrive. Tomorrow would bring more opportunities to solidify our relationships, and I was ready to embrace that journey with open arms. I took a moment to pause, reflecting on the path ahead. The stakes were high, but so was my resolve. I was ready to navigate this new landscape, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a champion for my clients, determined to forge a path toward success. Let's move forward together, I thought, knowing that while the future was uncertain, our commitment to one another would remain unwavering. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, and I was ready to write it with my clients at my side. I would not only survive this, I would thrive. And as I prepared for whatever lay ahead, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement about the journey we were about to embark on together. So I took a deep breath, embraced the challenges, and prepared to lead us all into this new horizon. I knew that we would emerge stronger, more resilient, and ready to seize every opportunity that came our way. This was my commitment, my promise, to fight for my clients and to ensure that together we could achieve greatness no matter the odds. As I closed my eyes for a moment, envisioning the future ahead, I felt a surge of determination. I wouldn't just be a survivor, I would be a force to be reckoned with. And so, with renewed resolve, I stepped forward into the unknown,